So today I'm going to talk about brush tools. Brush tools are to be used on a little bit more intuitive way than with the pen tool. The purpose of the brush tools is to typically create a look that has a more I don't want to say natural, but a look that's like traditional media. Instead of the sharp, precise lines that we've been creating up to this point, there's a sharp contrast to that. Now you can create strokes or lines that look like they were created with a piece of charcoal or maybe a watercolor brush. They don't function, excuse me, like they would in Photoshop, but it can add it's a nice contrast from a design perspective to the sharp lines that you've been using so far. You can get a nice mix of really precise lines and something that's a little bit loose and freer. There are different kinds of brushes that we'll be working with here. Okay, I'm going to start at the top, and we have the brush palette here. You start with a simple, we have round brushes, and we have oval brushes, and we come down here, we have brushes flat brushes that look a little bit more like a calligraphic flat pen, so that when you write with it, if I were to come up here, for example, and let's use that brush, and we select the brush tool, and if I click and I drag like so, and you're not going to hardly see anything because it's all white. So let me give it a black color. And I don't want it to be a fill, I want it to be a stroke. Okay, so notice that it's no longer just a simple straight line, meaning of equal thickness that it has, depending on how you click and you drag on the tool, it has varied width. Okay? The round brushes are pretty much, they're going to look the same. On the other hand, if I were to select any of these other brushes, okay, notice that it starts to look more like charcoal, or it has a rougher feel to it. I can also apply something called a scatter brush, where it takes individual little elements and it links them to that path, and it has a more random look, so that's what we're going to do with the leaves or other scatter brushes that we can use. These are the art brushes that look like watercolor, charcoal, whatever, paint. And then we have our border brushes that we're going to create here. So you can see in the final piece right here that there's a border that surrounds a little illustration of the lake and the trees and the grass. And it consists of what looks like at each corner a little circular brush, impromptu kind of brush stroke, and then attached between those corners, it looks like somebody took a little brush of the yellow paint and just kind of spread it across. Well, this can be done very easily, and it doesn't take hardly any work at all. They've already created some additional brushes for you too. You'll see one here that looks sort of like a little chain to tie up the boat to the shoreline. If you're interested in additional brushes, you click on the little button right here, and you go down and you look at brush library. We have arrows, we have artistic brushes, calligraphic, charcoal, ink, paintbrush, scroll pens, watercolor, more borders, more than you can possibly imagine. If you want to create a little illustration, you're creating certificates, and you want a really fancy scroll, kind of intricate border, they've got those. They have all kinds of borders. Decorative, for banners and seals, more scatter brushes, similar to the leaf that we saw. And this goes back to the default brushes, and then they enable you to load additional libraries should you have them. And we can create our own custom brushes, which is what we're going to do in a few short moments. Okay? So this is what it's supposed to look like when it's done. And they give us a little sketchy outline to begin with. Okay, to start our illustration. So this could be, they're giving you a pretty precise guide for us, but it could be a really loose sketch that maybe you did on a napkin that you scanned in and now you're going to illustrate it. The brush tool, unlike the pen tool, is to be used freehand. That you just take your mouse and you draw with it. A better tool to use, however, is if you have a few nickels that you know, extra nickels to spend at home. And I say a few, but it could be a few $100s. That's what I mean by nickels. Is to use something called a Wacom tablet. Anybody familiar with those? They're really pretty nifty, and they were really designed not with this in mind, but with another program called Painter, which was designed a little after Photoshop came onto the scene, and it was designed to simulate traditional media. So to be able to paint the traditional media, you know, painting with a mouse is like painting with, or drawing or painting with a bar of soap. It's really pretty clunky, huh? But to actually paint with a brush or to draw with a pencil or a pen, you have to have that feel, you know, that I actually hold it like a pen. So what they have is a stylus or a tablet, and they come in varying sizes depending on how much money you want to spend. They come from a little postcard, 4x6, all the way up to like 12x12, 11x14, something like that. They're really quite large. They can get quite large, and they also get quite expensive. One that's about 6x8, I think, is maybe between $200 and $300, and that's a good size to have. The tablet also comes with something called a stylus, and it's a pressure-sensitive stylus that looks much like this pen. Okay, it doesn't have the little cap on the end, but it has a little tip at the end that where an eraser would be for a pencil. And at the other end, it has a little nib similar to what you would see with a ballpoint pen. And when you press on it, it's springy. It actually presses, you know, in. It's not as rigid as we would see on a ballpoint pen. And when you press on the tablet, it is pressure sensitive, and it will work with this brush tool as well. Okay, similar to traditional media, meaning if you have a soft pencil, if you barely touch the paper with a pencil, you make a very fine line, don't you? And it's very light. Use the same pencil, bear down really hard, and you get a really thick, bold line. Do something in between, go from pressing hard to light or light to hard, and you get a very kind of look, you know, that goes from light to dark, thin to thick. That's what that stylus will do. That can't be done with the mouse. So they are really pretty nifty, and they are really well suited to using the brush tool when you do that. It's really pretty nice. So you can actually kind of draw, and you feel like you're drawing or sketching, the same when you use the pen tool or the brush tool, or rather brushes, you know, the artistic brushes. So they created a little drawing for us that we're to now work on top of and create our piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to use this one right here, a little charcoal brush. Maybe I want the trunk, the outline of the trunk of my tree to look like it was drawn in charcoal. What's nice about this tool is that it does not have to be precise. You just loosely follow the path that you've drawn, and I click and I drag here. You see, I'm not being very precise here. And I let go, and it looks like it was drawn with charcoal. The added benefit to this when we're done is that if you don't like the look of this, or maybe you didn't follow the path as closely as you originally intended, for example, we can always come back, and you can see the underlying path here. I can click and add a point, and I can use my direct selection tool to bend that, and notice that that follows the path. So it remains editable as long as you wish to change it. Likewise, if you want to select a different one, maybe I want a different, just a rounded brush instead. You select the path, select a different brush, and you're done. If I want, again, the leaves, I can apply the leaves. You can apply whatever you want when you select the path. It's up to you. Okay. So I'll continue. Now, I'm following the exercise pretty closely, but not really precise. and I'll make another path over here and continue to, again, it's not going to be perfect, but it will get us where we want to go. So I'm just going to try to quickly make our branches here. And again, I'm not following this really precisely because I said work drawing with a mouse is really pretty awkward. The thing that's kind of weird, I'm left-handed, but I use the mouse with my right hand, and that's another feature that it's kind of nice, but I don't like. That when the path is selected, if you get close to it, it'll think that you want to redraw it at the very end. Watch what I did. So notice how this is selected. And now with the brush tool again, when I click here, and I get close to it, and I click and I drag it, notice how it thinks that I want to redraw it, and it bends it in that new direction. That can be nice. In this instance, I find it a nuisance. So depending on what you want to do, will determine. So now I can do that. Put some more here quickly. Let's try and quickly get this done. So you don't have to watch it. And you can always come back. So this last one that I made really doesn't work. You know, it's a little too wiggly. I want it to look a little differently. Then just select with the direct selection tool, as I did before, individual anchor points, and go ahead and tweak the path until it follows exactly the way I want it to. Okay? So that's pretty straightforward. What you can also do, which is really nice, as I said, we can select all of these, or even select one. Let's select one and give it a try. And I'm going to select a different tool down here. I'll select this one. Okay. And it does change just that one, so that's pretty nice. If I select all of them, I could do the same thing. Notice how it changes them all. Okay. So you're not restricted in any way. Now we're going to use the scatter brush to create our leaves. And the scatter brush is interesting that if you forget to deselect your paths, it applies that brush to all of them. So that doesn't work so well. But if I double click on this, you'll notice under scatter brush options, there's a lot of flexibility in here, a lot of way of controlling the brush. We can come in here and we can control the size variation, meaning how random or how precise do you want these shapes to follow the path. Do you want the size to be very consistent and precise, or do you want them to look a little different? You know, so that when you draw the brush, that you have a very varied size of the leaves. The same with the spacing. Do you want the spacing to be really evenly distributed, or do you want it to be random, or vary from leaf to leaf? The same with the scatter. Do you want it to be very precise, or do you want it to be random? And also, do you want to rotate the objects? So do you want them to look like a picket fence, all precisely the same, or do you want them to be slightly skewed each time it applies a different shape? Okay. So there's lots of things that you can do in here to change it. So I'll click OK, and now I'll select this tool now, which is the scatter brush. Select the brush tool, and now I'm going to go ahead and proceed to create some, you can see, oops, I didn't want to do that. And you'll notice with the scatter brush especially, you do not have to be precise at all, because it loosely attaches itself to the path, and you're set to go. Now, what if you want the leaves to be a different color? Then we have to do something a little bit different. We come in here and double click on the brush tool, and you'll notice down at the bottom it says colorization method. Right now there is none. And the key color that was given to this right now is this burnt sienna, kind of a reddish brown. And what if I want to make it look like it's fall and have yellow, and orange, and red, and I want a variety of colors of these? Do I have to have separate brushes? No. I'm going to select U-Shift, and notice it jumps to black, which is the color that I have in my palette. And if I click OK, it's going to give me a warning. It says leave strokes or apply to strokes. Well, I'm going to say leave strokes so that it does leave in this color. But now what I can do is when I select this and I select another, when I select another color, okay, and I use the brush tool, let's go back to the brush tool, and select the leaf. And now when I draw it, notice that it's green, and now I can select another color. Let's make sure that it's deselected because it will change. Let me bring up my color palette again. Let's select yellow, and now I'll select the brush again. There, brush again, and I'll draw again. And now we have yellow. So you have all different colors if you want. Okay? And it applies them in a fairly random manner. I'm going to move down from top to bottom. This one is pretty straightforward. This line, we look at the finished product. It's just applying a brush tool. Although, having said that, it still might be worthwhile showing you something from here. I'm going to go back to the brush tool. I'm going to select this one again. You want to do that so you can forget to deselect. It will automatically change it. Use the brush tool. And I'm going to click on here and drag it across. So I have a nice kind of yellow brush, or brush light. What if you want to change the thickness of it? This looks really too thin. Similar to being able to adjust the color of the scatter brush, we can adjust the thickness of each of these brushes too. And again, you do that by double clicking on the brush. And we want it proportional. Right now it says the brush is 120%. Let's really widen it and make it 300%. And turn off and on preview again so you can see how differently it looks. Okay? So you have that option of changing. So, and again, it will ask you, do you want to leave the existing strokes so that it only applies it to the strokes that you create in the future? Or do you want it to apply to everything that you've done so far? Okay. Now, if I wish to change this back, I need to select the path, and I need to go back and select this again, and go back and select it to 100% or 120, whatever I had before. And then check on and off. See, it's also changing the other ones that I used. So I'm going to apply the strokes, and it turns it back. So you can vary the brushes considerably. Okay. Now this tool I find to be, it's not really a brush tool, but they put it in here. And I find it to be the coolest tool. It is really neat. And it's to create random effects for fills. And I think you create a loose, sketchy look. It is, bar none, the easiest tool to use and the best tool to use. I'm going to create a rectangle back here, and what I want to do is I want it to look like grass. Well, if I select the rectangle tool, and I click and I drag in here, and I don't want any stroke, and I'm going to select the fill, and I'm going to select here, I want it to be nice and green. Doesn't look a whole lot like grass, does it? Okay? At least a loose sketch of grass. I don't know how many of you have tried markers or are aware of what marker sketches look like. They're loose, quick, and they have a hand-drawn look to them. They don't look as precise. They can never look as precise as this. But what we can do is we select the rectangle, and the rectangle is already selected. And I can go to Effect, and I go to Stylize, and I select the scribble. Check that out. Now, look at all the options. We can change the direction of our scribble. We can change the path overlap. Do I want it centered, outside? And notice that it lies outside just a little bit. We can adjust the variation in width. We can adjust the stroke width. the fat, the thin, pretty wide, huh? How straight or curvy is it? Variation, again, do you want it to look really consistent, or do you want it to look kind of, really, really loose and hand-drawn? You can adjust the spacing so it's really loose, or tight. Really pretty neat, huh? So it really has the look of somebody hand-drawing this. Click OK. You can always go back and edit it. You can always go back, and if I want to change the color and I decide, you know what, I really want bluegrass, it's there. And it applies that effect. Or I want it to look like dirt. You've got it. Now remember, every time you create a new shape, it's layered on top of the last. So what I want to do is go to Object Arrange and just send it back. So it puts it behind the tree. It's so simple, easy to use, and I find that to be the coolest thing. Because again, like the brush itself, it adds a nice contrast to the really precise, redrawn objects that we've made up to this point. Okay. They use the calligraphic, flat brush for the waves down here. To do, let's see, they've used the brush here, which they've applied for us, is the chain down at the bottom. Kind of interesting. Now, when suddenly it's not here, it's over here, and they have it here. So you're going to have to open up the finished one, and why they have not given it to us, I don't know. So I'm going to select, whoops. I'm going to draw the shape here, like so, and it gives me the chain. And I'm just going to drag this over here. And as soon as I drag it over here, notice it adds the brush to my start file. They should have added this. And if I zoom in here, you can see it looks like a little chain. And if I can come back and I can edit the path, or I can use the brush tool with the chain, and I can draw this like so, and it looks like I've made a little chain. How do you make a brush like this? It's very similar to what we're going to do with the border. So now would be a good time to make that border brush. They're made the same way. And they've given us parts, the parts that we need to do this. You'll notice over to the right here, we have a little squiggly, sort of like a cloud shape or just a circle. And we have our flat yellow brush stroke. Okay? In order to make a custom border brush, we need to have fills. We need to create custom fills. And we've done that before. So I'm going to go to Window and make sure that I have my pattern brush patterns available here. So let me come to where it is. Oh, it's right here. Okay, now I want to make sure that I see all of these. I want to show all swatches. So why don't I see a pattern? Okay, so it shows it all, but we don't have any patterns in here. Well, to make a pattern, all I have to do is select on the object and drag it in here. And it turns it into a pattern. Remember when I did that before? And then I select a rectangle and I select that, and it automatically creates a pattern fill. That's what I want to do. I want to name this. So I'll double click on it. There we go. So this is our new pattern swatch 1, and I'll call it Blue Circle. So I know which one it is. Similarly, I'm going to take my yellow stroke and I'm going to make a pattern of it, just by clicking and dragging it into my swatch palette, making sure that I have all swatches selected, and it will add that as a pattern. So just as I did with this, if I make a rectangle, circle, or whatever I select it, it will automatically create a pattern from there. I need to just for myself to be able to recognize which pattern I have, I'm going to name it. So to do that, instead of naming it new pattern 2, because if you have a half a dozen patterns that are pattern 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're not going to know which one is which. So it's easiest just to name them by double clicking on them. It brings it up, and I'll name it yellow brush. Okay. Now I'm ready to create my own custom pattern that's going to go around as a border for my illustration. Okay, and without any muss or fuss, all I will have to do is, with the rectangle tool, let me give myself a black border here. Just click and drag around the rectangle, just like I'm making that pattern here, which I do not want. So let's select this. Let's go back to the default foreground background. And object arrange, send it back so that it's behind everything. Just as easily as I made a rectangle with a black, perfectly drawn line, this is going to apply a border to it where at each corner I have the circle, and in between those circles that were drawn by the brush, I have the yellow stroke. Really very simple. I just need to bring my brushes back up. And what I want to do down here, this similar icons to what we've seen before. This button right here lets me create a new brush. The trash can allows you to delete brushes. You can cancel or remove a brush stroke if you want. You can options selected for brushes. You have, these are your controls for the brush tool down here. So I want to create a brand new brush, and it's going to ask me what kind of brush do I want to make. Calligraphic brush, scatter brush, art brush. I want a pattern brush because that's what this border is a pattern brush. We're creating a pattern that at certain points it places the circle, at other points it places the yellow stroke, and that's precisely how they made the chain tool for the chain, okay, the little circles. So I click OK, and it brings up a dialog box. It wants to know, and it gives you a little diagram under each of these squares, what pattern do you want this to be? When it's going in a straight line, I want the yellow brush to be in here. And you'll see it pops up. At each corner, okay, I want the blue circle. At the inside corner, if I make an inside corner, I probably want the blue circle. When you're creating patterns like the chain, at the very end or at the very beginning, what shape do you want? If we look at some of the custom brushes that are available in the library of brushes, you'll see some really intricate brushes where they have created a separate pattern for the beginning and the end, as well as the inner corners and the strokes in between those corners. Okay, it's pretty phenomenal at what they have done. So I'm going to just leave it pattern brush 1, or I can just call it my border. We'll do that. Click OK, and I've added it. Now watch what happens if I select my rectangle and select this. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Ta-da! Pretty simple. Although, as I said, some of them can be really complicated, very complex. I do not want to fill so that I can see my drawing behind it. There we go. So that's that. Let's, for a second, let's go back to the brushes. Look at some of the others. Here's an interesting border. So if I select this one, as I said, they can be very intricate. These were some really intricate patterns that were created. You'll notice that they created patterns for the corners. Again, inside, outside corner. They do not have any for the corners here. However, if we were to look at this one, a little bit different. They have inside and outside corner the same. I guess they don't have end caps for this. There was a rope that they used to have in here. I don't know if they still have it. And they actually had to build the end caps from the beginning and the end. So it just looked like one continuous rope. And as you use the brush tool or adjusted it with your direct selection tool, it will just look like a little windy rope. Perfect, perfect in every way. It's really very nice. Okay. You can incorporate fills sometimes. What they have chosen to do here, let me take this back, select this one and put this one back in here. Okay. Deselect it. To create the boat, what they have done here is they have used a tool that's a little bit more calligraphic. It has a sharp tip at one end and where did it go? Monkey's uncle. Okay, it's not there either, so I'm going to go back here. It's this brush. Okay, I want this brush, so I'm going to bring it here. Maybe they turn this one into a calligraphic brush too. Just I want to bring this one in here. So what I'm going to do is with the stroke selected in black, I can go ahead and I'm just going to draw and create the various parts of my boat. I'm going to zoom in so I can see this a little better. With the brush tool, and I'm going to draw and try to draw this carefully. So, okay. Deselect it, and if I need to edit it, I can. I'm going to come back and click here. And before I let go, I'm going to continue to draw the bottom part of the boat here. And let go. Well, if I want to fill the side of my boat with color, I can. Just simply select, even though it's not a closed path, go ahead and select the fill color, come back, and we can fill it like so. And again, notice that it's a little wobbly at the bottom. Not to worry, I can either eliminate anchor points like so, and then I can come back with my direct selection tool and I can tweak it, feather it out just the way you would with a regular brush. Right, or the pen tool, no different. Clear? Can I do this? Can add really, I think, really nice look to an illustration. It can be done, as you see here, entirely with brush tools. So it has a loose, hand-drawn feel to it. Or I think what makes it work even better from time to time, as I mentioned, is when you use it for contrast. You have a drawing that has a lot of really precisely drawn shapes where you've used the pen tool, and then you've gone back and converted some of those paths to a brush so it has a loose look to it. The look that maybe is done with a more hand-drawn, like charcoal or brush instead of a really precise pen. And the contrast between two of those can make something really, look really handsome. Because you have, the precise versus look. You have also textural differences too, because you have a really rough texture of a brush versus a really smooth texture of a pen. So that can be really nice too. And don't forget this scribble fill. This can be really, really neat. Really nice.
The tree trunk, is that done?
This is just, notice that they made two brushes in here.
Oh.
So, or two lines. So that's all, I'll do that. Let's go in here. Zoom in here so that you see what I'm doing here. Let's bring our brushes back up and let's see what I have here. I'm going to use this one. So I'll go ahead and use the brush tool. And I'm just going to make two strokes, one in here and one here. Okay, now they're just black. But now, remember, I want to change the color of it. I want it to be brown. I don't want it to be black. So double click, go back in here, method, and I want U-shift. And I'll click OK. And I'll go ahead and say apply to strokes. And now, right now, it's sort of gray. But if I bring up my color palette, I can select, okay, I want more of a bark color. Let's pick this even. Let's see. Oops, wrong one. I don't want fill, I want the stroke selected. That's another thing that I've forgotten to mention, that with these, by changing the fill, it doesn't do anything. I have to change the stroke. So let's flip this. So, there we go. Likewise, I'll select this one, and I'll make sure I'll use maybe the eyedropper from here, click there, so I have both of them, and then make sure that there is no fill in here, so that goes away. Now you have something that looks, you know, like you've just taken a little piece of charcoal and made a loose fill. It can be really, really, really very nice. It took people in the past, I mean, I know I sound old when I say this, and I am, that to develop these hand skills, especially when you use this like a marker. Markers are really difficult to use because when you use them on paper, they tend to bleed. If you ever used a marker and held it in place for too long, and it just, the ink continues to pour out of the marker and you get this big stain on your paper. So you had to learn to be quick and precise with your marks so that you could have a loose, precise, kind of a, that's a kind of a oxymoron, loose and precise. But it has a loose look, but it is very precisely placed. And it took, you know, people years to develop these skills. Now you just use your pen tool, come back. If you don't like the look, move the points around until you get the exact feel that you want and apply it. And the same with the scribble. You know, it would take people years to precisely move their wrist back and forth to make the stroke just the way they want it or as loose as they want it. Now you can come back and you can tweak this as much as you want. You know, you can change it indefinitely to get whatever kind of look you're going. Okay? Really nice tools. Definitely have the same purpose. And I'd like to see you use this somewhere, someplace, sometime before the end of the semester. Try to integrate it into one of your drawings a little bit. Okay? So that's working with brushes, lesson 10. Tomorrow I will go over the Tokidoki assignment and I will record that. So you will have an option. Tomorrow, I have not posted it yet. I'm in the process of creating some templates for you so that you'll have a choice of doing a skateboard deck or designing the look of a purse, and I'll have a template for the purse as well as the skateboard deck. And it does not have to look like Tokidoki, but we will spend some time in the morning, look at Simone Linga's videos of how he approaches his illustrations for the Tokidoki. Style illustrations that he designs. I also have an article that I wrote on my blog that you can read and you can see the kinds of stuff that he's done. And there's other YouTube examples of what he's done so you can get an idea of what the kinds of stuff that he does. It doesn't have to look like his, but it's just, now you're designing patterns that are going to go on products. It could be a box of cereal, it doesn't matter. Well, this is going to be a skateboard deck and a purse. Okay, and you have your choice of doing one or the other. If you don't want to do either one, that's okay, and you can do the traditional product assignment. And the product would be to do like a perfume, you know, take a photograph of a product like a perfume bottle or the car that we saw, and you try to make that look as realistic as possible, if that's what your interest is. Those typically take a lot of work. So it depends on how quickly you want to work. To design the look or the pattern for a skateboard deck will take a lot less work. But if that's what your interest is, to do very precise technical illustrations, then by all means, move forward with that. Do that one. Okay? So that's what we'll cover tomorrow. And I should have the assignment posted so you can begin working on it. I will talk about it, at least at length. We'll have it recorded on video so you can review it and look at it. Okay, I have all my other lectures posted. So, yep. I would like it done by the end of tomorrow. If it's not turned in tomorrow, that's okay. But just to keep you on track, it would be nice if it is done by the end of tomorrow. If you could turn it in Monday or Tuesday next week, that would be great. Okay, so the remainder of today is the workday to be working on your math or exercises. Trying to unconnect.